Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the uncommon grass-type Pokemon Shroomish and its relatively rare grass-fighting type evolution Breloom, collectively known as the Mushroom Pokémon. While they might not seem like much of a threat as juveniles, the members of the Shroomish family are deceptively strong fungi that can more than make themselves a threat in close quarters if given the chance. Shroomish have small ovoid bodies with a green lower body, 2 stubby legs, and a beige-colored upper cap. Their upper form has a series of 5 green spots around it, with a small, fleshy, sprout-like form at the top of their body, a series of fringes on their lower edges, a small V-shaped mouth, small black eyes, and a furrow like a unibrow over their eyes. Their evolved form, Breloom, have a much more humanoid form to them, standing on 2 legs with arms and legs that end in a pair of red, sharp, claw-like forms at their ends. Their green lower body is complemented by a similar beige upper form with the same fringes at the base of their neckline, with their long neck connected to an actual head with a fleshy green cap on the top and a pair of red round structures that allow them to readily disperse their spores into the air, with much larger black eyes and a beak-like mouth form. They additionally possess a tail in this form, with a long beige-colored form that ends in a bunch of 4 green spherical bulbs that act as storage facilities for seeds. The members of the Shroomish family are unusual fungi that have an abnormal life cycle that sets them apart greatly from other types of fungus Pokemon. Much as with normal fungi, these creatures gain their energy by breaking down the tissue of dead organic matter and are able to do so quite effectively, getting all the nutrients they need to survive from this process and ultimately making them great composters and a help to most agriculturalists that are in need of a way to get rid of excess leaf litter and things of the sort from their property. Also, like many of the mushroom Pokemon known, these creatures reproduce via spores and are able to scatter them far and wide in both their evolutionary states, though in the case of Shroomish, they tend to do so more readily as a result of their need to reproduce rapidly, as many do not make it to adulthood. This also means, however, that approaching them can be more than a bit dangerous, as the spores that they release can prove to be a choking hazard and, more importantly, can be mixed with internal toxins to make them highly poisonous and a danger for any non-grass type to inhale. This as a whole defines their existence for the most part, and the moves they can get access to reflect this, though there are some major differences in their powers from one stage of evolution to the next, which will be covered further shortly. As a result of their mushroom forms and their ability to make potent toxins, despite not being poison types themselves, these creatures can have access to the Effect Spore and Poison Heal abilities as base abilities, being the only Pokemon that can normally have Poison Heal as a base ability, but there are some differences in the hidden abilities they have access to. On the one hand, Shroomish have the capacity to take the energy associated with a harmful status condition and use it to fuel their bodies readily, granting them access to the Quick Feet ability as a hidden ability, while their evolved form, Breloom, are better adapted to using weak but fast moves to deal damage, and if skilled enough, can have access to the Technician ability as a hidden ability. As far as their stats are concerned, in the case of Breloom, their soft body forms do not do them much in the way of justice on most fronts, as their bodies are not that resilient against damage, can't move all that fast, can't make much use of the few special attacks they can get access to before evolution, and have poor stamina no greater than that possessed by Shroomish, leaving most of their base stats as below average for a fully evolved grass and fighting type Pokemon. The only exception to this is their base attack stat, which is monstrously huge compared to their other stats, and more than above average in this regard, making them powerful physical fighters to contend with, and creatures that can more than break a few bones in their opponent if allowed to unleash their full strength. Shroomish live fairly simple lives on the forest floor, and spend most of their time feeding on dead and decaying leaves for sustenance, generally minding their own business and doing little to disturb others. This is primarily because their forms, though somewhat sturdy despite their appearances, are still quite soft, and they can easily be punctured by the claws of the few types of bird Pokemon that are brave enough to try and feast on them. Thankfully, because their forms are quite soft, with no real hard parts to speak of, these fungi can squish their bodies down fairly flat, and use this skill to hide under only a few inches of forest floor debris when they feel they might be in danger. They prefer to live in warm, humid environments, and are especially common after rainstorms and whenever the air is thick and the land around them damp, as this makes it easier for them to eat and break down the forest litter they feast on. While they are not technically nocturnal, these creatures are easier to spot in the dark when the sun is set, hiding in the shade and in piles of leaves during the day to avoid most of the predators that do attempt to locate and feast on them. If they are found and attacked while out and about, though, caution is highly recommended, as these creatures can scatter spores from the little hole in the tops of their bodies, and if threatened, they will gladly mix internal toxins with the spores and scatter them in great volumes, literally choking the air with toxins that induce incredible pain in those that inhale them and cause weeds and young trees to wilt, making it easier for their slow-moving forms to escape, at least for a little while. Unlike the spores of Pokemon like Paras and Parasect, however, these hold little in the way of medicinal value and are thus a serious hazard in all ways, but at the very least, their small size means that they can't scatter them very high into the air without wind to aid them, so the threat can be mitigated somewhat, though some might wish to take advantage of this to help them learn some of the rarer moves that they can learn if not evolved immediately, such as Spore. In short, these wee beasties can be a bit of a choking hazard if you're not careful, but are generally fairly intelligent and can make for decent fighters to work with, if only for the sheer power they can obtain once they evolve. For reasons that are still not entirely clear, when Shroomish evolve, their form changes drastically, and they go from being simple composters to powerful fighters that can use their awkward animal-like forms to make themselves a dire threat in battle. In evolution, these creatures develop a set of clawed hands on their body that are connected to their form by arms made out of extremely durable and elastic tissue that allows them to store vast amounts of kinetic energy in their form. In doing this, once released, their arms will shoot out at incredible speeds, to the point of their fastest strikes being practically invisible to the human eye, and with a tremendous amount of force, allowing these beasts to effectively box against others and use their arms to deal devastating punching strikes against those that stand in their way. This grants them access to the Mach Punch attack immediately after evolving, and the moves they can learn as a whole change drastically, as they become so incredibly proficient at using fighting type moves that they are effectively classified as fighting types themselves, giving them some serious offensive advantages not normally present in their pre-evolved form. On the one hand, this does rob them of the capacity to learn many of the moves that their normal mushroom form might obtain later in life, including the Poison Powder, Worry Seed, Giga Drain, Growth, Toxic, and Spore moves, with Breloom instead getting access to the Feint, Counter, Force Palm, Mind Reader, Sky Uppercut, and Dynamic Punch moves. On the other hand though, this change in moveset makes them a far better fighter as a whole, and their light and springy footwork can make them a pain to counter before they can strike with lightning-quick attacks. The fact that these creatures can strike with incredible reflexes and tremendous force makes them better than most professional boxers and even more powerful than Hitmonchan, though without the versatility, and are thus an extreme hazard to have to face in close quarters. Despite this change in form and power though, these creatures are still very much fungi and enjoy munching on forest litter and trees in hot, humid environments, using the small red holes in their cap to spread their spores over a long distance. It is also interesting to note that these creatures now have tails, and the ends of them are capped by a series of 4 bulbous structures. These are actually seed-containing pods that are made from hardened and compacted spores, which these creatures use in emergency situations to create entire colonies of Shroomish in places where there seems to be a lot of litter but no one else to clean it up. These pods are not inherently poisonous to humans, but eating them is a bad idea, as they taste incredibly bitter and can make even the strongest of stomachs grumble in complaint from just a single bite. This might just be a footnote compared to the incredible power their bodies can wield, but the fact that they can use their poisonous spores as a distraction, forcing opponents to lower their guard as they choke on the toxic spores, makes them a powerful threat and definitely something that only grass types will truly have a chance of countering, and even they might not be able to handle the destructive power of their punches for very long. While they might not be among the most traditional of grass-type Pokemon, or even fungi in general, the members of the Shroomish family are still hardy creatures that can certainly make a name for themselves when put into close contact with another beast. You might have to adjust yourself to take advantage of the gifts they can have, both from birth and in an evolved state, and while the decision of when to evolve them may hinge entirely on the moves you want them to have access to, the final result will likely be a powerful weapon of war that can hit fast and hard against nearly any opponent. Just do yourself a favor and try not to get in their face and make them feel threatened if you come into contact with them. Inhaling the toxic spores from Shroomish might be enough to make you incredibly ill, but that pales in comparison to the surgery you may likely need to reconstruct your face after a Breloom decides to get right up in your face. With a spring-loaded fist, that is. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description.
Yeah, no.
With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.